The wind had a mean whistle to it that morning, like it carried old curses in its teeth. It cut through the cottonwoods along the South Platte and chased yellow dust across the road, dust that settled deep into the folds of Evelyn Carter's coat and stayed there. She walked away from the train station with her shoulders hunched, one battered suitcase in her hand, a baby pressed against her hip. The other 3 children clung to her skirts, silent and thin, moving like shadows that were afraid to fall behind. Kirsty, Colorado, 1942, did not welcome people who arrived with nothing. The man at the grain elevator hadn't even let her finish her sentence. He shook his head once, eyes already sliding past her, and turned back to his work. The grocer did the same. The woman at the church door listened, lips tight, then said there was nothing left to give and closed it gently, as if that made it kinder. 4 mouths in times like these, they said without saying it. The town wasn't cruel. It was tired. War had taken the young men, drought had taken the crops, and hope had worn thin. People like Evelyn, hollow-eyed, desperate, were reminders of how close everyone was to falling apart. Her boots crunched against the gravel as she walked. The suitcase felt heavier with every step. Inside were all the things that had survived the journey. 2 dresses, a cracked tin cup, folded paper she didn't look at anymore. The baby whimpered, weak and hungry. Evelyn shifted him higher on her hip and kept moving. She didn't stop. Stopping meant thinking. Thinking meant breaking. Nearly 3 miles out of town, the road bent toward open wheat fields, where the wind rolled through in long silver waves. There was a shallow rise near a ditch where wild grass grew tall. Evelyn crossed it, then finally stopped. She set the suitcase down, lowered the baby carefully onto her lap, and sank to the ground. The children gathered close without a word. Their clothes still smelled like coal smoke and iron from the train. Their faces were pale, eyes too big. Evelyn drew her knees to her chest and pressed her forehead against them. She closed her eyes. Not now, she told herself. Not here. Her mind betrayed her anyway. Kansas. The house she'd left behind. The sound of her husband's boots in the morning, then nothing. No note, just his belt missing from the hook and the truck gone from the drive. There had been whispers later, a waitress, a card game. Evelyn didn't care anymore. What mattered was the silence he'd left her with, the weight of being the only one standing between her children and the world. A diesel engine rumbled behind her. She didn't lift her head. The sound slowed, stopped. Boots hit dirt. A man's voice followed, rough but not unkind. "You all right there, miss?" Evelyn raised her head slowly. Her mouth felt dry as cotton. She didn't answer. The man stepped closer. He was big, broad-shouldered, dust clinging to his coat and hat. His face looked carved rather than grown, lined by sun and years of work. He held himself easy, like someone who didn't need to prove anything. "Didn't mean to scare you," he said. "Just saw the little ones. Figured maybe someone could use a ride." The children stared up at him, wide-eyed and wary. "I got a ranch west of here," he went on, nodding toward a battered truck idling on the road. "Name's Luke Halstead. Was heading back with supplies. If you need somewhere warm for the night." Evelyn stood. She picked up the baby, then the suitcase. She didn't answer him. She just started walking toward the truck. Luke didn't reach for the suitcase, didn't rush her. He just walked beside her, matching her pace. The children climbed into the truck first. Evelyn followed. The warmth hit her like a wave, and her throat tightened hard. She swallowed it down. She would not cry. Luke climbed into the driver's seat and turned the key. The truck rolled forward. They drove for a long while without speaking. The road narrowed. Town fell away behind them. The land opened wide, rolling toward distant, snow-dusted foothills. Finally, Luke spoke again. "What can you do?" It wasn't cruel. It wasn't suspicious. It sounded like a real question, like he wanted to know what parts of her were still standing. Evelyn stared straight ahead. "I can cook," she said. "Clean. Fix what's torn. I can read, count. I work fast. I don't complain." She paused, then added quietly, "I can hold 4 children and still chop firewood." Luke nodded once. "That'll do." They didn't speak again. The ranch appeared low against the mountains. Buildings huddled together like they knew how small they were. Light glowed in the windows. Evelyn didn't let herself hope. She held her children tighter instead. Luke showed them the bunkhouse. 2 rooms, cracked windows, an old stove, but it was dry, warm. He handed her a ring of keys, told her where the water pump was, and left without asking a single question. That night, Evelyn sat on the edge of the cot, the baby asleep against her chest. The others lay tangled beneath a quilt that smelled of cedar and smoke. She watched them breathe. For the first time in weeks, no one knocked. No one threatened. No one turned her away. Sleep still didn't come. But as the wind whispered against the walls, Evelyn realized something had changed. She wasn't safe yet, but she wasn't alone. And somewhere in that thin space between fear and exhaustion, a fragile thing began to stir. Something like the beginning of hope. Evelyn woke before the sun, the way hunger and worry had trained her to. The bunkhouse was cold, frost clinging to the inside of the window glass like white veins. She moved slow so she would not wake the children, tied her hair back with a piece of string, and stepped outside. The air bit hard, sharp with the smell of animals and pine. Somewhere in the dark, cattle shifted and breathed. Luke was already awake. She found him in the barn, shoulders buried in feed sacks, working as if the day had been waiting on him. She stood in the doorway for a moment, then cleared her throat. "Tell me where to start," she said. Luke looked up once. "You know horses?" "Not much," she said. "Cattle less." He nodded. "Then we start with chickens." He showed her how to rake out the coop, how to hold the feed bucket just high enough so the birds did not rush her legs. He did not rush her. When she fumbled, he stepped in, showed her again, and stepped back. No sharp words, no sighs. The children stayed close, gathering eggs in a wire basket, whispering to the goats through the fence. When her youngest slipped in the mud and began to cry, Luke crouched, handed him a peeled carrot, and said, "Ain't no shame in getting dirty, son. World's full of worse things." Evelyn felt something tight loosen in her chest. They worked until her arms burned and her fingers ached. It was the good kind of tired, the kind that came from doing something that mattered. At dusk, Luke left a pot of stew on the bunkhouse step with half a loaf of bread. No speech, no watching her eat, just food. That night, Evelyn slept. Work at sunup, a short rest at noon. Work again until the light failed. Luke spoke when needed, nothing more. He asked nothing about her past. She did not offer it. They fixed a fence near the orchard, posts leaning like tired men. Luke handed her a glove with a finger missing. She wore it anyway. They worked side by side, holding wire, driving posts. Once she noticed a long scar along his thumb. She did not ask. At noon, they sat under an old apple tree and shared beans from a tin. "My brother used to call this cowboy caviar," Luke said. "You had a brother," she said. "Had," he answered. "Fell off a roof." She nodded. Some losses did not need words. That night, her oldest boy showed her a torn book. Luke had given it to him, said there were more. Evelyn kissed her son's head and said thank you the next morning. Luke shrugged like it was nothing. The town noticed her. At the feed store, women looked her over and whispered. Some crossed the street when she passed. She kept her eyes forward. Luke never mentioned it. He worked the same, ate the same, treated her no different. One evening, she asked him why he had stopped for them that first day. He thought a moment. "Saw your boy wave at the truck," he said. "Reminded me of someone. That was all." Spring crept in slow. Snow pulled back into the hills. Calves came late, and Evelyn knelt in straw beside Luke, steady and calm. The bunkhouse began to smell like soap and bread instead of cold smoke. The children laughed more. They slept deeper. Evelyn read at night by lamplight. Old books, almanacs, words felt like doors opening again. One afternoon, a deputy from the next town rode up with a letter. Her name was written hard across the front. Evelyn read it standing by the pump. Her face drained of color. She folded it small and slipped it into her apron. Luke found her there, still as stone. "You all right?" he asked. She handed him the letter. Luke read it slow. His jaw tightened once, then eased. "He wants the children," Luke said. "Yes, about you leaving." She shook her head. "He left first. I waited. Then I ran out of waiting." Luke stared at the dirt. "You'll need someone on your side," he said. That night they sat on the porch. The children slept inside. The stars burned bright and close. "They're saying things," Evelyn said quietly. "About me. About you." Luke crushed his cigarette under his boot. "Let them." She turned to him. "I don't want to ruin what you have." "You didn't," he said. "I was alone before you came, just didn't know it." The lawyer arrived 2 days later, clean suit, cold eyes. He spoke of custody and proof and standing. He said marriage would matter. Evelyn stepped outside before her knees gave way. Luke followed after a while. "I'm not asking you," he said. "Not out of fear, not out of duty." She looked at him, really looked. At the lines in his face, the steadiness in him. "You'd marry a woman with 4 children," she said. "I'd be proud to," he answered. She took his hand. "Yes," she said. They married quiet. No music, no crowd. Just truth spoken plain. The children watched with wide eyes. Luke kissed her like he meant to stay. The papers were filed. The fight was not over yet. But Evelyn slept that night with his name and her children safe under the same roof. For the first time since Kansas, she was not bracing for the worst. She was standing on something solid, and the storm she knew was still coming. The storm came in the night, the way trouble often did. Wind tore across the hills, rattling the barn doors and bending the cottonwoods low. Rain followed, cold and hard, turning the yard to mud. Luke was up before the worst of it, pulling on boots, checking fences by lantern light. Evelyn watched from the doorway, the children behind her, all of them quiet. By morning, the lawyer returned with the deputy and a man Evelyn had not seen in years. Thomas Reed. He stood straight in the yard, clean coat, hat held tight like he was afraid it might blow away. His eyes slid past Luke and settled on the children. They shrank back without knowing why. "I've come for what's mine," Thomas said. Luke stepped forward. "You're on private land." Thomas smiled thin. "So is my family." Evelyn felt her heart pound, but she held her ground. "They're not your family," she said. "You left." "I worked," Thomas said. "I provided." "You drank," she said. "And you hit walls when you missed." The deputy cleared his throat. The lawyer spoke of papers and claims. Luke listened without moving, hands at his sides. When it came time, he spoke plain. "These kids are fed," Luke said. "They're safe. They're in school. They're wanted." Thomas laughed once. "You think that matters." The storm broke again then, thunder rolling close. The horses spooked in the corral. A fence snapped with a sharp crack. Luke turned on his heel and ran. A yearling was down near the creek, tangled in wire, water rising fast. Luke waded in without a thought. The current pushed hard. He braced, cut wire, hauled the animal free. The creek surged, and Luke lost his footing. Evelyn screamed. Luke went under once, came up coughing, grabbed a root, and pulled himself to the bank. He lay there a moment, chest heaving, rain beating down. Thomas watched, pale now. The deputy stared. The lawyer said nothing. Luke stood, soaked and shaking, and walked back to the yard. "Life ain't clean," Luke said. "It don't follow paper. You want these kids, you prove you can stand when it gets rough." Thomas looked at the children. They did not move toward him. The deputy folded his hat. "I seen enough," he said. "We'll let the court finish this, but today the kids stay." Thomas turned away without another word. The days that followed were heavy but steady. Luke fixed the fence. Evelyn baked bread. The children helped where they could. Neighbors came by with eggs, then milk, then quiet nods. The talk in town softened. Court day came bright and cold. The judge listened. Teachers spoke. The doctor spoke. Luke spoke last. "I ain't rich, Luke said. "But I'm here every day. I don't leave when it's hard." The judge looked at Thomas. "Can you say the same?" Thomas did not answer. The ruling came down simple. Custody stayed with Evelyn. Thomas was granted visits, supervised. He left the room alone. Outside, Evelyn leaned against Luke, tears finally falling. He held her like the ground holds a tree. Summer came full. The orchard bloomed white. The children learned the ranch by heart. Luke taught the boys to ride. He taught the girls to mend. Evenings were long and kind. Laughter filled the yard. One night, Luke brought out a radio. Music crackled thin but true. He took Evelyn's hand and danced slow under the stars. The children spun around them, bare feet in the dust. "You saved us," Evelyn said. Luke shook his head. "We saved each other." In the fall, they added a room to the house. Neighbors showed up with hammers and nails. No one spoke much. Work said enough. Years passed like that. Not easy. Not perfect, but real. On a clear morning, Luke stood at the fence and watched the children ride out, tall and sure. Evelyn joined him, her hair threaded with gray. "You ever think about that first day?" she asked. He nodded. "Every time I hear a truck slow down." She smiled. "I'm glad you stopped." "So am I," he said. The land lay quiet and wide before them. The past had loosened its grip. What came next would come, and this time they would meet it together.